أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. O Lord, let not our hearts deviate now after that you've guided us, and bestow your mercy upon us, for you are the bestower of bounties without measure. وصلى اللهم على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Ameen. Khadija Beza, whenever you're ready. Or, sorry, Mariam and Ran are reading it, right? So go ahead, Mariam and Rayan. And then Hatija Beza is going to take over from there. So introduce the text. This is the 19th flash on frugality and the 7th point. I'll put it up here. Yeah. So go ahead, Mariam and Rayan, whenever you're ready. Just read the first point.
Okay. 7th point. Excess and wastefulness lead to greed, and greed has 3 consequences. The first is dissatisfaction, and as for dissatisfaction, it destroys endeavour and enthusiasm for work, and causes the dissatisfied person to complain instead of giving thanks, and makes him lazy. Such a person abundance possessions which, though few in number or licit, and seeks possessions which are licit and trouble-free. He sacrifices his self-respect on the way, and even his honor. The second.
Can you instead of going to the second consequence, could you read the footnote? If our host who is sharing their screen could go over the footnote, and then maybe we could take a pause there before going to the second consequence. Thank you.
Consumers increase and producers decrease as a result of wastefulness and lack of economy. Everyone fixes his eye on the government's door, and industry, trade, and agriculture on which social life depend, decrease, and the nation declines and is impoverished.
Thank you. I think we can take a pause here only because the following points are a little bit lengthier, and we can just move through these as we feel is a good speed. So we're reading from the 7th point, and as we may recall, this is on frugality, on the verse, in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, eat and drink, but waste not by excess. So, so here it seems the author is going to take us through or discuss with us 3 different consequences that greed has. And if I recall correctly, last week we had discussed frugality and what was it? The act of being
Stingy.
Stingy. Yes, thank you so much. The word was escaping me. Yes, last week we had discussed that. So this week it seems the author is taking us through these the 3 different consequences of greed. And here, so the first one, I guess my immediate takeaway would be that it's saying that one who is greedy will inevitably be dissatisfied with themselves, with their lives, and because of this dissatisfaction, there will be a lack of zeal or enthusiasm for work, and instead, that will the enthusiasm for work will be replaced by laziness and complaining instead of giving thanks. What I find interesting here as well is it's saying that in the result of greed being as such, the person then abandons possessions which are few in number and are licit. So licit means things that are permissible, and seeks possessions which are illicit, which may be beyond the bounds of which of my created nature or in other words, things that I might do in a state of forgetfulness or heedlessness. So I guess there seems to be, for me at least, a direct connection with, at least in the second part of this first part, the first paragraph here, you know, being greedy then is a state of forgetting that the possessions or the things that I'm being given are being given to me, and instead looking at the lack of things that I might potentially have or not have in that case. And so being forgetful or not being mindful of my own role of having of being a created being in this universe. And as such, the author says he sacrifices his self-respect on the way and even his honor, which is interesting. But I guess in the act of being greedy and, you know, looking at things that I don't have, as opposed to that which I do have, then I become, I guess, a beggar of sorts too. But I'd like to take a pause here and maybe just see if there are any words or anything that has attracted anyone's attention. And Fariha, please go ahead, and then we'll have Mariam.
Thank you, Hatice Beza, for a beautiful introduction. So my first question, just like while we were reading this, I'm just going to highlight it. Access and wastefulness lead to greed. I am having a little trouble making the connection. How can access or being wasteful lead to greed? Because here I am, I'm floating in like abundant wealth and I'm being extravagant over it. So, you know, I'm not even thinking about this should perish. You know, it's just something that keeps coming. I'm surrounded by it. Like, how can that lead to greed? What would make me greedy about it? I was just having a little trouble understanding that point. So let's see if anyone has any take on that, because definitely if I have something in abundance, then I'll be more extravagant towards it, but it's just that I'm taking it for granted. I'm not, yeah, I don't see how can that lead to greed. Like, what would make me think, oh man, I may be having this in scarcity or something. Yeah, I don't see that connection right now. Thank you.
Before we go to Mariam, yeah, thank you for posing that question. And just to share my immediate thoughts on it, I think last week we had also discussed, you know, the state of being frugal or not being frugal, or stingy or being stingy, did not necessarily have to do with how much I have, right? Because even one who is wealthy or like a rich king can have a frugal approach, whereas one who is perhaps like a poor man or a modest man, or maybe not so modest, could have a stingy attitude. So I wonder if that may potentially be related to your question. But before we go to Mariam, I'm just going to have Faria speak once more, assuming that it's on topic. Please go ahead.
Just one comment that I added. So yeah, the same question as before, and wondering, as in, like, why would I would not look to acquire more, right? So that was just one point I wanted to mention, because we're talking about greed here. But I think maybe let's see when we unpack some more, going with the discussion. Hopefully that was on topic.
Yes, it was. Thank you. So I guess we'll keep Faria's question up in the air here, and Mariam, would you like to share something as well? Please go ahead, either a question or a comment.
I actually have a question about something that you said. You said when you don't look at what you already have and look at what you don't have, you become the beggar of what?
I am not exactly sure what I may have said, but I was talking about earlier. If I look at what I don't have instead of what I do have, then that would immediately put me in a state of a lack of gratitude or thankfulness for what I do have, because I'm constantly looking at that which I don't have. And that might further push me into the state of greed, as in wanting more and more. But perhaps I think essential for our conversation is maybe we can try to define what greed is in our discussion here. And I think that will help further um, continue this conversation and shed light on the questions that have been posed. Ali Murmur, please go ahead.
I think beautiful questions, beautiful comments, and also beautiful reading. Now, the problem rises from definition of being wasteful or excessive. So we understand that being wasteful in terms of quantity. But I think the author, although it gives some examples which is related to the quantity, but ultimately the aim of the text is to teach us that being wasteful is not in terms of the quantity, the numbers of the things we have or the amount of the wealth we have. The wastefulness, by definition, first of all, we have to define that not knowing the purpose of existence of something that we want. For example, the purpose of existence of our desires, purpose of existence of our neediness, purpose of existence of the things which are provided out there in order to satisfy our needs corresponding to each other. We are human beings. First of all, we have to define ourselves rightly. If I define myself in terms of body, inevitably, I look at the things which satisfy me in terms of their body. That's a very essential problem for humanity. For centuries, the problem of definition of human beings caused many different philosophical discussions and argumentations. If I see myself in terms of body, I see for example, food, the best simple example, in terms of their body. But if I define myself in terms of my human qualities, so in return, I define the foods or anything which corresponds to my need, to satisfy my need in terms of their qualities, not their body, material body. So for a wasteful person, excessive person, is by definition the one who doesn't see the purpose of existence of his own self, as well as purpose of existence of the things that they feel the need for, which are provided out there. That definition of the purpose of existence of the things starts from once defining himself, who I am, what I am in this world. Wasteful means if he, for example, if a person defines himself as body, what is he doing in this definition? He is wasting his humanity. He is wasting his human qualities. He is just saying, he is just seeing himself as meat, flesh, body, or bones, blood. And he sees his needs in terms of his body needs, which addresses the stomach, mostly as far as the eating side of is the concerned, or air as far as the oxygen need of the oxygen of the body, body's need of oxygen. So they define themselves in terms of stomach, they define themselves in terms of body, in terms of heart, in terms of lungs, but they don't see themselves as a human being. So if someone wants to satisfy his needs because he doesn't see the quality, what is left with him is to see in terms of quantity. But what is hidden from him, although he doesn't acknowledge the existence of his human qualities, he sees the things which are expected to satisfy his needs in terms of quantity, but because he doesn't acknowledge his human side, which requires eternal satisfaction, infinite satisfaction, because human feelings are open to endlessness, infinity. He doesn't know that, he doesn't recognize that his feelings urge him to satisfy in terms of infinity, with no end. But because of his wrong definition of himself, he looks at the matter in terms of quantity, in terms of number. So he wants to get the number in terms of infinity. Do you understand the logic? So he wants more and more and more and more numbers of the things what he wants. So because his human side urges him to look for the satisfaction in terms of infinity, because he doesn't really use his human side, he wants to satisfy himself rather than in terms of quantity, but in terms of quality. Rather than in terms of quality, he wants to satisfy himself in terms of quantity, which is infinite. This contradiction never, ever makes this man settle down in satisfaction. He wants more and more and more because he doesn't recognize his reality. That is why wastefulness lead to greed. That needs to be understood. I don't know whether I made it clear or not. If I didn't, please somebody help me to make the case clear. The contradiction is very essential. This is not essential in order to understand frugality. It is essential in order to understand everything. What is my position in the universe? What is the meaning of my existence? Everything turns around this contradiction. In my reality, I am a human being, and my human side looks for eternal satisfaction, and eternal satisfaction can be obtained only through seeing the qualities of the things, not the amount of the things created out there. I can only be satisfied by acknowledging the qualities of the things. Where do they come from? Who can be the one who provides these qualities on the things that I need? For example, I am hungry. It is the simple example, best example. I am hungry. Yes, I need food, but my humanity needs infinite satisfaction, eternal satisfaction, which means, the provider of the food must be the one who provided the qualities of the food. Who can be? What can be the provider of the qualities of the food? Then if I realize that it is the one who provided the qualities of the food, can only be the one who provided the whole universe, who is the owner of the whole universe, who provided the, for example, let's say an orange. The orange is provided by the one who created the whole universe. So, my human side says, I need this provider. I have to look for this provider. My stomach needs 1 or 2 oranges. That's it. I don't need 100 oranges. I cannot eat it. They get rotten. You see the right attitude now? But this is frugality. Understanding that I need 2 oranges, not 5. So I look for 2 oranges only, but my human side needs eternal satisfaction. What is that? The creator of the orange must be the one who satisfies my eternal expectations. This is what frugality is. The second attitude is what the frugality is. But if I don't acknowledge my human reality, I go and try to satisfy myself by increasing the number of the oranges I have. That is why I become greedy in terms of meta. So even if I have billions of dollars, I need another billions of dollars. That's why the source of greed is or lies in wrong definition of humanity by the human beings themselves, defining themselves in terms of matter. So defining the universe in terms of matter. In our example, defining the orange in terms of matter. So I need orange, but as a human being, I need eternal satisfaction. So I need eternal number of oranges in order to satisfy myself. You see the contradiction? This contradiction makes me inevitably to be a greedy person. I hope I made this very crucial point clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we need to, or I need to, first and foremost, before I even define greediness, define how I view myself as a human being. And the contradiction that you highlighted in my understanding is that I guess, my human side, once if I define myself as a human, and by that recognize that I have this need for eternity, that just as my needs extend to eternity, that which I need also extends to eternity in all respects, you know, for meaningful existence, for happiness, for in all respects. So trying to take a quantitative approach, as in trying to, I guess, encompass infinity within the framework of numbers, if that makes sense, then becomes a contradiction because I can't count infinity um, by definition, and my human side looks to infinity. So if I were to define myself, I guess whether consciously or unconsciously, as my body, as my physical needs, then that because I still, you know, even if I define myself as just my bodily needs, then I still feel the need for eternity, but I don't become, if I don't take this into account, that I have a human side and that the one who gave me this endless needs is the one who can take care of them, then I try to seek this that which can meet this infinite need using what is available to me physically. So whether that's attaining more wealth or food or whatever, I'm trying to constantly seek eternity within the universe itself, and not only is that impossible, but I don't have the lifespan for it anyway, even if it were, which it's not. So that's what I understand, and inevitably because of this, I end up wasting. I guess first and foremost, I end up wasting myself as a human being because I don't take into account all aspects of myself. I limit myself. I ignore the part of myself that you know, is using my body as a vehicle, and in doing so, then I inevitably it leads to a state of wastefulness, which leads to greed. So I'm constantly trying to make up for, in a way, I'm trying to make up for my human side um, by just trying to accumulate things. Which, you know, I guess, you know, I don't know if this will answer Faria's question or if it has already, but I'm thinking about how, like, you know, in the human being, it's innate to want more in the sense that I have a need for eternity. But again, going back to the crucial point of redefining or defining myself, how do I define or view myself as a human being? Because in my wanting more of things, do I really seek more things in quantity, or is it really if I'm able to have that meaningful connection with a single orange, then does it really matter whether I have 1,000 oranges or not? So I would like to take a pause here to see if Faria, if you want to, yes, please go ahead.
Thank you for sharing your takeaways as well with what was shared by Brother Ali. Alhamdulillah, it helps a lot. So the way now I'm looking at it is the way the author is presenting the case. It's really from a capitalist or materialist worldview, I would say, where, you know, it's just a worldview where I think see just from a horizontal level, and that's it. So obviously with that type of worldview, anything that's given in access may lead to greed or must lead to greed. I was also thinking about that part, may lead to greed, or, you know, even access and wastefulness lead to ingratitude and also may lead to greed. And so now with that horizontal worldview, that really makes sense. But like you all pointed out, where I need to first define also the purpose of my existence. So with that state of being, or in that mode or mindset, I then look at everything in terms of questioning my reality, that, hey, will this satisfy me? Does this XYZ is the source of my happiness? Okay, so I am, you know, I have a pool of mangoes in my backyard, and will that satisfy me? Right? So it's all about what am I attributing the satisfaction to? So yeah, otherwise I can go on with the view of, hey, you know what, this mango will keep satisfying me, or anything, created thing will satisfy me, but then I'm just limited, or I'm limiting my existence to just this transient universe, rather than looking into the bigger picture, where I question my endless desires, needs, and feelings, and I'm able to stretch it out to an eternal need, or what is really the source of existence of my need for eternal satisfaction. So yeah, this was very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing your reflections. And as you were speaking, you know, I was thinking about how the very first sentence that you had highlighted in the beginning of your question, excess and wastefulness lead to greed. You know, I guess excess not just in having more of something that I may need, but also in, you know, my overconsumption or misuse or lack of awareness of that which I'm consuming, I think helps me in understanding how my usage of something and wastefulness at the same time tied to one another then leads to greed for me. So if anyone has any other questions regarding this, we can take them right now. And if not, please feel free to raise your hand at any time. I was just thinking about in the same paragraph, you know, the author claims that because greed leads to, or wastefulness leads to greed, excess and wastefulness lead to greed, then the person becomes dissatisfied, which makes sense, and they complain. And as a result, it makes them lazy as well. And I'm wondering, is this really true? Because it almost seems like, I guess maybe we need to also define lazy in which respect, because, you know, I would think one who is greedy is also wants something. So there's an active role in it, in a way, like seeking to get something, constantly seeking more and more and more, and that may be problematic. But maybe this is not a very important point here, but just something that attracted my attention. Brother Lee, please go ahead.
Going back to the previous discussion, one point needs to be emphasized. The outside world doesn't make me define myself. I define the outside world. So I am the one who defines it. Universe is the one which is defined by me. So my own understanding of my own self starts the process of reasoning. If I see myself as not created, but happen to be accidentally like this in the history of time, and I happen to be like this naturally, as an extension I go to the universe and see it as an object or an entity happen to be by itself. Interpret the universe accordingly, according to my own definition of my own existence. So I need an orange. If I define myself in terms of matter only, happen to be by myself as I am, happen to be as I am, accidentally, naturally, whatever the name you put on it, doesn't matter, then I have to define the orange as something happened to be accidentally there. So that my relationship with the orange will be based on body-to-body relationship. But while I am trying to satisfy my needs, without realizing even if I deny it, I am a human being and my human side needs infinite satisfaction with no end. So I am under the effect of this infinite satisfaction, urged by my human side, although I don't accept this, but I am urged by it. So I want to infinite satisfaction from the orange body. So how can I have infinite oranges? By increasing the number, going and going and going, and never reach the infinite, and I die. That's why it causes greed. Actually, Maryam Özdemir wrote an interesting in the chat box sentence. He said, greed is an endless loophole. Yes, greed is an endless loophole. I agree with Maryam. But why greed is endless loophole? The question is this: why is it so? Not because we hear from our friends or people around us, greed is bad or something, you cannot satisfy yourself, but we have to understand it. Why is it endless? We have to go back to this question now. Why I want endless numbers of oranges in order to satisfy my endless needs? Because I defined myself in terms of matter. As a result, I defined orange also in terms of matter. Now, Miriam answered, because of creator is endless. Miriam, don't hurry. Let's establish this. Wait. We cannot jump to the creator, Miriam. You are clever. You can understand. We have to go as an end. We say the creator must be the one who satisfies me, because I need endless satisfaction. He can be the source of endless satisfaction. That is the result. That is not the reason. I think we have to train this here, Miriam. Don't hurry. Now, just be patient. Now, because I need a limitless satisfaction, but I don't realize that that is human side requires it. But I define orange in terms of matter. How can I reach in terms of matter to the limitless? I have to try to increase the number. That is why trying to increase the number of the oranges that I need to satisfy myself, then I have to add, but never reach the infinite. That's why it is, then if it is an endless loophole. We have to understand why greed is an endless loophole, because of the definition of myself in terms of body. Now, this case, somebody must summarize this case in a precise way, not like me, so that we should understand most of our problems, not only for being greedy or not being economical or frugal, not only for this, for every problem that we are facing in this world derives from this misrepresentation of myself when I define myself. So that reflecting this definition of myself on the definition of the universe outside there, then I will never get out of this endless loophole, because I need eternal satisfaction, although I don't recognize it, and try to get the eternal satisfaction from the body of the created beings out there. In order to obtain them, I struggle my best. Now, let's settle this subject, and then we can talk about why greediness causes laziness. That is another subject, but it's an important subject. We have to deal with it today. But let's understand this matter. This is the foundation of all philosophical problems. Okay, I think we need to summarize this in a more precise way within its own context, if you like, without going into other subjects, just to see how my relationship with the universe works, and accordingly I try to obtain the universe according to my definition of my own existence. See the contradiction there. Somebody helps me, I hope, to make this case clear, because with my language, I know that I'm not making it clear.
Thank you for that. So before we read the comments in the chat box, I just wanted to see if anyone would like to take a stab at trying to summarize what was said as best as they can. And, you know, we're all friends here, so it's okay if you're not totally sure, but if you would like to try to summarize the last point that was made, I'll take a pause here to see if any hands go up. Brother Adam, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. I think it was said very precisely. I don't find that it needs to be clarified much, but but I'll still summarize what I understand. Our definition of who we are is the foundation of how everything happens. So it's not something that's outside that defines me. I have to first establish from myself, from my own position, what it is that I am, and then look at all the things accordingly. So in one maybe aspect here, many people don't do, or let's say I don't do this. This issue is, there's an issue here. We are generally taking maybe outside definition of the things, not starting from inside. And in the case of food, or in the case of bodily life, that's very pervasive. It's very common, right? Everyone says, you know, I am my body, I'm what my height, or I'm physically in need of certain things. So I'm defining my life that way. So I try to find most of my life, we see many people focused on food, material aspects around food, and so on. Another thing that I saw recently that I experienced with some people, I was trying to think about how to best describe this issue, was the issue of racism, or not, it's very cliche, I know, but a kind of cliche, meaning it's like so commonly used. But somebody, I was in a conversation with a few people, and one of them was talking very like idealistically about, you know, our society should be unified, we should be so together, everyone should love each other. And the other person was saying, yeah, but it doesn't happen, and but nobody does that. So many people are being oppressed, and it just sounds like nice words. We should be unified or something. You know, why can't we all just get along? Why was this? Why is this going on? So for of course, when we see the outcome of people not getting along or people going into different groups, it causes a problem, right? It causes some kind of challenges in the society. But if you think about what we're talking about here, again, the definition of who we are needs to be put in place first. What was missing in that discussion where people were talking about being nice to each other in different races and different different groups in the society? What was missing was always this issue of how we define ourselves. But they were immediately starting from the point of view of what my color of skin is, or what my origin of nationality is. They weren't going any deeper than that. Origin, nationality, skin color, whatever, these are things that are physical, again, not necessarily human. So the natural result of a group of people who are defining themselves in this way, I'm thinking now about the orange example. With the orange example, you hoard all the oranges so that you can feel satisfaction. I'm just brainstorming. From the social aspects, how people live in a society, if they're defining themselves as saying, I'm this color of skin, then they find satisfaction through, again, their own propping up their own groups over other groups, putting themselves is superior to find satisfaction, right? They look for trying to make definitions of each other and groups to try to label and control, or sometimes maybe this is an outcome, but at least at minimum satisfaction comes through, in that point of view, trying to find one race or group that feels superior than the other, and find reasons for that. It's also, I found it to be an endless loop there, as opposed to being harmonious, being able to find how all of the people in the society can work together, can live together, can respect each other. So if someone defines themselves instead as being human first, as being not physical body first, but being containing and being really a spirit, or let's say a human, whose needs go way beyond physical life, physical body, whose real experiences go way beyond physical body, and whose interaction, again, also between each other, is not at the body level, then I think you can find much more harmony. You can find much more contentment. But what we see is, again, this issue of not defining ourselves first and allowing for very superficial definitions to come and take over us, this, I think, is a big problem. So I'll just say as a little small point. I was in discussion with people from other religious traditions also. They were, although they were using some kind of good language, but they never had a real good formula for solving this problem, or they never could go into this domain or this area, what we're talking about here. So I found that to be interesting. Not saying they know everything, maybe there's better than them out there, but at least in my experience, they didn't, I have not found anyone going in this area.
Thank you for your comment, Brother Adam. We have applause coming up here, and for talking about also the practical implications and, I guess, social and societal context when I don't first take that initial step to define myself or define what it means for me to be a human being in an all-inclusive way. I see your hand is still up. I'm not sure if there's something you want to add. Okay, if not, we do have a lot of comments, but Brother Ali, I'm assuming this is in response to Brother Adam's comment, so please go ahead.
Yeah, it is. It is emphasizing on the importance of this matter. In the Quranic example, it's a beautiful example. The Quran gives us the relationship between Adam, not the Adam who spoke, our friend Adam, a human being, and Iblis. Quran says, very interesting. Quran says, Iblis saw himself better. Why? Because he defined himself in terms of the matter, which is fire, in terms of its body, which is fire. This is the description of the Quran. Is it really fire? Not a problem. It's just an example. It is just an example. That is fire. So, because its body is made up of fire. So, and when he is confronted with with Adam, the human being, he also saw Adam, human being, as made up of what? Clay, earth, dirt. So his conclusion was, according to his definition of himself, because he is of fire, but he doesn't have any other value. He is of fire. So he said, Adam is on dirt, of dirt, made up of dirt. Which is better? Fire is better. That is his reasoning. You see that in the description of the Quran, what the Quran teaches us here, however you define yourself, you define the other objects accordingly. If you define yourself in terms of skin color, you define other people in terms of their skin color. If you define yourself in terms of body, you define the orange in terms of body. You see that oranges are useful because it has vitamin in it. It has nice taste in it. That's body. But you don't know, we don't question whether my being consists of only body or other elements in it. So if I don't see my human side, which makes me the human being, then I don't see the orange as the qualities manifested in its existence, which made it as an orange. So I have to, if what I need to do here, I have to define myself in terms of my human side, which is called the soul. I have to look at the orange in terms of its soul. That's what the Quran teaches us. So first of all, concentrate on defining yourself. Accordingly, you will define what you need out there. You need an orange, you need money, for example. So you have to define the orange in terms of body, but you are a human being in reality. What you do, you want endless oranges because your human side needs endless satisfaction. That is the core message I get from frugality or dissection.
Thank you. That was a beautiful connection and reflections for you to share with us. And I was thinking about how, like, I guess at the end of the day, whether I take on a satanic approach in the way that Iblis did in defining himself as fire and defining Adam or mankind as clay, or whether I choose to see that I am not just made up of matter, my humanity goes beyond this. I seek meaning in things. In either case, there is a need for value for one's own being, for one's own self. So in a way, I can say both actions or both approaches are ignited, or the catalyst for taking such an event or such an approach is because I just feel myself so intrinsically tied to this need for value for myself. But and this need is not, quote unquote, evil or bad in and of itself. But what becomes problematic for me is if I don't question it and I perhaps on like an autopilot mode, or maybe not so much autopilot because I choose to take on one approach over the other. So the problem lies in when and if I define myself just by what my body is made up of materially. And this is so crucial because as was emphasized earlier, it's directly tied to how I see the rest of the universe and how I define myself as a human being, and so how I achieve value for my own being. No one wants to feel like trash. No, everyone wants to feel valuable, and in the way, if I define myself of the material aspect, I have no way but to kind of almost impose my superiority over someone else in my need or endeavor for value. Whereas that's not necessary with the second approach, where I see that my being as a human being is not just made up of these things that I can count, that are in quantity, but in quality. So things, the meaningful aspect of things that go beyond, or what things look to. And in such an approach, then I don't have to push someone else down to find meaning for myself, which also fits with my humanity. Because if I find that, if I take on that satanic approach and I say I am better, or my race or my whatever is better than someone else's because of XYZ reasons, then I know deep down someone else can also make that same or a similar sort of claim, and claim of superiority over me, based on other factors. And again, my value as a human being is then at stake, and I don't feel secure within myself. So I do see a hand up. I would like to call on Farah, if hopefully it's on this topic, because I do have a lot of comments here to read, but I would love to hear what you have to say, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Indeed, the points made have been pretty crucial, at least for my own understanding. I had a question and then perhaps just a thought that from my perspective, how I see a brief summary, but not a complete summary. The question in it being, so we also do observe, people who may not be, let quote unquote believers or religious or don't have any sort of connection to an eternal being or a purpose in life per se, greater than just sort of the life of this world, but they also seem to be practicing frugality in the sense that, in the outward sense, in the fact that they limit their, physical use of things. Like outwardly, it appears to be the same as someone who may not be connecting it in a meaning aspect. And so I wonder, like, how do we view that behavior? People who seem to have a very modest life, but may not be associating their thoughts to an eternal being. I know that our discussion has been not on the physical sense of the word of frugality, but I was wondering about this situation. And my own sort of summary from what I heard thus far includes sort of, I was looking at these words excess and wastefulness, and based on what I hear so far, I was thinking that excess reminded me of what was discussed before, and also a Quranic sort of term of man thinking he's self-sufficient. So that reminded me of an idea of excess. That means that man views himself more than what he is. And again, going with this idea of needing to define ourselves within our own terms, not coming from the outside. I think man exceeds his boundaries when he defines himself as being self-sufficient, as thinking that he doesn't need anything, that he's not in need of anything, and that he can fulfill his own needs. And wastefulness as this concept of doing things that don't have a result, that don't produce anything. And that's what we usually associate with wastefulness. Like when someone does an action, but there's no meaningful result from it, then we say that he wasted his time or he wasted his effort. And so when when man thinks he's self-sufficient, and when and his view of himself becomes his view of the world, which is that things in and of themselves are sufficient in themselves, and attaching causal sort of qualities to things themselves, starts to use them in a way that produces no result. That gives him, when I say no result, in the sense that it doesn't give a lasting or a meaningful, and meaning by definition is not bound by time and space. So when he starts to use or employ the things around him, such as food or time and many other resources that we have, they give him no meaningful, no lasting result. And hence he wastes his ability of being a human being, of being a conscious human being. And he also wastes the qualities of the things that he seemingly is putting them into use. And so as you imagine somebody trying to, let's say, work a machine, not with the purpose that it's been given for, then he's basically just getting obsessed with this idea of making it do more according to what he needs. And if he's seeing himself as self-sufficient and in material terms, then he's looking at his success as quantity or in material terms. And this sort of blindness or illusion leads to greed in the sense that he is going for more and more in material terms, and he finds himself acquiring more, whether material, with no meaningful, no satisfaction to his soul. And outwardly, it looks as greed as someone who just acquires more and more material, but never gets satisfied from it. Because if he were satisfied, then we would see some sort of change in I guess, like, you know, if someone is satisfied with the wealth they have, then we see themselves not working for the wealth any longer, but rather for something else, working for other reasons. So this is this is the connection I was trying to draw between the words excess, wastefulness, and how they may lead to greed, and greed being sort of this obsession or blindness or an illusion of not only your own self, or actually it starts from your own self, and projecting it onto the world, where you just view it as an accumulation of quantitative accumulation as a definition of success and something that you think will satisfy you, but it is definitely an illusion.
Thank you, Farah, for that beautiful, comprehensive summary. Yeah, I don't really have much to add on to it, but yeah, definitely about you know, starting from one's own self, and this view extending to the rest of the universe, or in the way that I view the rest of the universe, and ending up as being, as you said, a quantitative accumulation of things that I define for myself that I think that I need. And in terms of your question, so what I'd like to do at this point, just to be a little bit more fair, and to our younger audience who've been very patient for me, I know Mariam, and then Mariam and Rayan both had their hands up, so thank you for the thumbs up. I'd like to go back to them for a moment and see if, in regards to the other topic that we were discussing, they're all connected, but if they have any comments or questions they'd like to share while keeping Farah's question in the air for people to tackle as well. So Mariam Özdemir says, I don't have much to say. Okay, in that case, Mariam and Rayan, I know you had your hand up before and you have a beautiful comment here. Would you like to read your comment and perhaps share what else is on your mind?
Yes, thank you. So I'll read my comment.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So a greedy person is never satisfied with what they have, and they don't realize the one who is providing this.
And my comment is, you should always be thankful because you will always provide with something that helps you or keeps you satisfied. But the greedy ones don't see it, even though they should think how they ended up on this universe living from being young and to now. They should realize that they have been provided with things all their life from the existence giver.
Thank you for your comments. I really do think this is a summary of the class. I don't have much to add on to it. There are multiple applauses in the chat box here. Thank you so much for sharing this. And I know, so at this point then, I see Ali Murmur's hand up. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you for Mariam and Rayan for this beautiful summary. I would like to go to the Farah's question. We see that there are some people who don't claim that they believe in God at all, and they are being generous. And also, they are also not greedy, some of them, not all. That's possible. Why? I can see the alumni of the famous universities. They get education from the university and they know how to make money. They have huge amount of money. And then after they retire and reach the very old ages, they donate huge amount of money to the university that they feel in debt of their richness. Because of the source of richness, they say, was the knowledge this university taught them. That's why they became rich. What does it mean? Why, towards the end of their life, they give money? And some people do not really accumulate at all. They just get as much as they need. Although they don't believe in the Creator, they don't believe their human side needs eternal satisfaction. Not at all. They have nothing to do with this kind of definition. They still define themselves in terms of body, matter, and as a consequence of this, they define their end as going into annihilation, which means they are going to disappear from existence. What is the point in getting more and more? This is the result of despair as against their nature. Their nature, their human side says, I need eternal happiness. They say eternal satisfaction. Their worldview may be, we are not talking about certain people, but this is the ideology, how the ideology is constructed. Their worldview is that I am going to die and there is no need to get more than I need until I die. There is no need, because what am I going to do with it? Because I will disappear from existence. Not because they feel satisfaction. They feel despaired, hopeless. That's why they give away some property. That's why they are not greedy, because they are clever enough to see that they are going to die anyways. There is no satisfaction for them. But on the other hand, those people who define themselves in terms of human soul, which is endless incapacity, and this human soul cannot be the result of matter. Matter cannot make human feelings. So they understand that their human side must be given to them by an eternal being. Look, the process is working in a completely diametrically opposite direction. My Creator gave me the need for eternal satisfaction. The universe cannot satisfy it, but my Creator does, because it is the source of eternal need, eternal satisfaction. He made me in need of eternal satisfaction in order to demonstrate that He can satisfy my need. Only He can satisfy my need. So in completely contradictory reasons, one is being generous and not greedy just because he is despaired, as the Quran explains, like the Iblis. lost his hope from God's mercy, and the other one is not greedy and also generous just because he knows that matter cannot be the source of absolute satisfaction. Infinite satisfaction. Infinite satisfaction is the creator of themselves or of the universe, of the things they need. One of them is the result of from hopelessness, from despair. The other one is the result of from hope, from full satisfaction. The other, the one who doesn't accept himself as a created being by an absolute creator, he is being really not greedy just because he says there is no point in it. I am going to disappear from existence anyways. Why should I bother to pile up the money, to pile up the property? This is very important because people mostly says, no, you don't have to be a religious, God-believing, God-conscious person in order to be generous, in order to be not greedy. Why? Look, I don't believe in God and I am not greedy. I don't believe in God and I am generous. So I don't need religion. Because I myself am a generous person and not a greedy person. What's wrong with me? Why should I go and follow a religion? Not the reason is just contradictory to each other. One of them is fully satisfied. That's why he is not greedy. The other one is not satisfied at all. That's why he is not greedy. We have to understand this difference. This is a very essential matter. Again, in general, this is not only related to our subject, this is related to all aspects of our lives. We have to be aware of this contradictory position, although in the material world, it seems to be doing same thing. Two of them are doing the same thing. But the reasons are completely contradictory to each other. I think this explanation helps a little bit, at least, to the question raised by Farah.
Thank you. Farah says very helpful explanation. Thank you. If Farah or anyone else has any comments or questions, this is a good time to raise your hand. I'll just take a quick pause. Please go ahead, Brother Ali.
I am speaking a lot, but before the time is up, we have to concentrate on or to discuss the matter why being greedy results in laziness. This is a very important question, very practical question. It depends on the definition of laziness. Laziness doesn't mean that somebody is not working. For example, a thief is working very hard to plan how to break into the house and steal the valuable things from there. It is working hard. It is not lazy, seems to be. So laziness doesn't mean not working. Laziness is explained here, working in an illicit way, not in the licit way. What does it mean? The licit way means somebody uses his labor and as a result of, as an outcome of his labor, he is given something and satisfied with it. That's why he keeps using the labor in the licit way, in the right way. How about the lazy person then? Lazy person again works, labors, not in the right way, labors in the wrong way. How? To make more and more in an illicit way. He is working like a thief is working in an illicit way. Laziness is defined in the Quranic term, which the author also follows this term, not working in the way that human beings are expected to work, but working in an unnatural way, not a right way, working in the wrong way. For example, planning. For example, those people who are working in casinos, especially Wall Street casino, they work very hard. They go crazy. They go crazy. They really exhort themselves until they get so tired at the end of the closing of the stock market, they cannot do anything else. But they are lazy because they are not using their labor in the way that it is supposed to be used. They are using their labor in a way that how can they cheat people? Laziness, the definition of laziness must need to be redefined in our minds. Laziness doesn't mean sitting in the corner and doing nothing. That is a kind of simple way of laziness. The real laziness is not working in the right way, which is called licit way, the way that we are created for. Thank you. I hope it helps.
Thank you. It definitely does help and has answered another question I had actually. So in my understanding then, understanding both laziness as that which is permissible for me or licit for me, or in other words, which is appropriate to myself as a human being, in the all comprehensive way that I define myself as a human being. Whereas illicit then becomes, or lazy, acting in a lazy way becomes acting in such a way that is not appropriate to myself as a human being, or in other words, limiting the way in which I define myself as a human being to the quantity, things in terms of quantity, and myself as a body. Mariam, I see your hand is up. Please go ahead. Mariam?
Just a second, I'm writing one last note, and is it fine after I write this last note if I say all of my notes?
Sure. Actually, there are two comments, so maybe after we read the two comments, do you mind sharing your notes all together at the end? Would that work? Okay, awesome. There's a comment from Swail Dar, says, I took from lazy when he says the dissatisfied person to complain instead of giving thanks. He is lazy with regards to contentment and thanks. Would you like to elaborate at all on your comment?
Well, really nothing more than that. When he says he abandons few possessions which are few in number though licit. and seeks possessions which are illicit and trouble-free. He sacrifices his self-respect on the way and even his honor. Because at least in my mind, there when you have to, let's say, are cognizant of your work in that you see your work as producing some result, you are thankful for the whatever you're given and are content with whatever you're given and thankful for whatever you're given for that work. But through dissatisfaction, in dissatisfaction, you're not really content and thankful for what you are given from your work. So you seek alternative means to make it, I guess, quote unquote, easier to obtain more possessions. And so you lose sort of perspective of contentment and thankfulness because you don't see yourself as being given. And you're lazy in that regard, which is really the most important aspect. So you become greedy out of dissatisfaction, and sort of lose your humanity or become lazy with respect to your humanity, which pertains to, as he says, to complain instead of giving thanks. Because to complain is easy. To give thanks means you have to reflect. To me, it's the difference between building something and burning it down. Burning something down is easy, but building it takes effort. And thankfulness, contentment and thankfulness take some serious reflection.
Thank you for elaborating, and that makes sense to me. One thing that resonated a lot was, I guess in, seeking alternative ways to do something quote unquote more easily. It may not necessarily be physically more easy or easy, but it may also be so as well. But I seek alternative ways, in seeking such ways, I lose, or maybe I never had the consciousness that I am being given to begin with. So again, it's up to me to kind of attain things. Thank you for sharing. There's a comment by Hamim as well, which says, not using your human qualities for its ultimate purpose equals laziness. I'd like to also give Hamim a chance to elaborate on their comment if they wish to do so.
Thank you. Pretty much what is being said as far as, questioning one's purpose of existence. So like everybody said at the beginning, how do I define myself? And accordingly, I'll go on making sense of everything around me in the universe. So, and several, cases were presented with different types of attitudes. So even within the universe, I may be following a certain order that is predisposed in as far as following the way I'm made in terms of picking up a certain lifestyle, being frugal. It's very prevalent now. But if things are not connected to its source of existence, as in if I do not return everything back to its source of origin, then I'm not fulfilling the purpose of my existence. So otherwise I can go on living a decent lifestyle here, regardless of what I do as far as laboring. Perhaps I can be having, not even laboring anything physically, but I have money working for me, all right? Just like a very practical example. And then I say, this is it. This is my life here from birth until sunset, as in, the graveyard. And so, yeah, let me give back to people or things or causes that I, charity causes that I deem I'm connected with, or institutions. So then, like, I'm not utilizing my human qualities for the way they're supposed to be utilized, because I've accepted it. It's like a given up attitude. Yeah, that's it. This is it. The universe is it. I lived a good life. I was a good man. I donated to charity. Yeah, I, got to roam around the globe, and, this is it. I'm dying a satisfied, happy person. But then, yeah, then the human qualities are not being utilized for their true purpose. And, like, again, questioning, really, what is all this for? Why am I given all these richness within the human being? I don't know, somebody earlier brought up that analogy of a machine. What good is a machine if it's not really, if everything that's within it is not explored? And then really thank or be grateful to the maker of that machine for providing everything. Because things are given to us and things are done onto us. I cannot claim ownership over anything. So what I can do is really find out who's the bestower of all the things that I'm given, and then turn everything back to it. And so that would be utilizing my human qualities for its ultimate purpose. And if I go on in this quest of finding the source of my existence and acknowledging it, then yeah, I won't be falling into the laziness category. Thank you.
Thank you, Fariha, for sharing your thoughts. And yeah, definitely, I guess the richness that makes me, or the richness that is entailed within being a human being is then, if I don't utilize these qualities for the purpose that they're given, and I use them in excess and in a wasteful manner, then indeed I end up just not utilizing things for their purpose, which in terms becomes worthless, I guess. I do see Farah's hand up, and Mariam, I know if I'm not mistaken, you're going to be reading your notes. So in hopes of saving the best for last, Farah, please go ahead.
Yeah. When I look at the word laziness just over here, it is true that I don't make the connection between the conventional use of the word and illicit activities. But if I follow the steps that the author has taken us through in connecting, excess, wastefulness, greed, and then laziness and illicit, just taking the string of words, I'm seeing the connection in the fact that someone who is greedy is measuring themselves by the quantity of what they're accumulating. And I guess in today's world, or in the material world, things gain their value by quantity and by obviously the amount of time it takes to get to that quantity. So something has a higher value if it takes you less time to get there. And so someone who is, an ideology, a greedy ideology, wants to get to its goal of accumulation of material as fast as possible. And how do you do that? Well, you have to cut corners. You have to cut the process. What would take you 2 years will take you a few months. What would take you good quality ingredients, you use subpar quality ingredients and to get the same amount of result or even more. And it reminds me of this thought that that occurs to me, that if you do look at and this is like a specific opinion, if you do look at some of the biggest, let's say, companies in the world, which happen to be okay, without going into details, some of the biggest, richest, let's say, or valued companies in the world. And we also look at some of the richest, individuals in the world. Anyone getting that amount of money, any individual entity getting an exorbitant amount of money, and also really fast, which we especially observe these days, where companies are growing really fast, is that there is something in their practices that is illicit, or the founders or these individuals in their story have had something illicit. So yeah, I see that we are out of time, but that was a thought.
Thank you, Farah, for sharing your thoughts, and for everyone for being patient as I abuse my moderator powers. Mariam, please, we would love to hear your notes. And as Ali Murmur noted, there is no class next week. So inshallah, we will end today with that in mind. Please go ahead, Mariam.
I'll try reading my notes super fast because we're so over time. When you look at what you don't have instead of what you have, you become blinded and greedy. You are wasting your humanity when you see yourself as only meat and flesh. The one who provided must be the one who provided everything else in the universe. This is the way you understand that he is who you need, not the universe itself. You cannot have 1 million oranges. You can't eat them all. This is an example of frugality. Once you become greedy, it is an endless rope that never ends. You have $1 million and you'll only be satisfied if you have another million. And this goes on until you realize where you're going or are. But some people never see because they're too blinded by greed. Greed is an endless loophole. A greedy man forgets who gave him everything he has and doesn't have. Being thankful to him is what makes you satisfied. Excess and wastefulness leads to greed. However you define yourself, you define others accordingly. An example is if you define yourself by skin tone, you define others by their skin tone. When your value as a human being is at stake, you do not feel secure. Your creator gave you the need for eternity. The universe cannot satisfy this need, but he can. This is a message to tell you to turn to him. Not using wait, I missed something here. Not using your human qualities for its true purpose is being lazy. Burning something is easy, but building it takes effort. And that was my last note.
Thank you for your very comprehensive notes. Multiple applauses all over. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating and sharing your thoughts. Alhamdulillah, it was very beneficial, and thank you for being patient with us as we went a bit over time. Inshallah, talk to you all in 2 weeks. Assalamu alaikum.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Glory be unto you. We have no knowledge save except that which you've taught us. Indeed, you are all knowledgeable, all wise. وآخر دعواهم الحمد لله رب العالمين. Al-Fatiha. Ameen. Jazakallah khair, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. See you all. You're right. Like Khadija Beza said, in 2 weeks.